Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our Ordinary Council meeting, Tuesday the 28th of June. Welcome, councillors, welcome members in the gallery. Okay, live streaming statement. Edward River Council wishes to advise members of the public that council meetings will be recorded and available after each meeting on council's website. All care will be taken to maintain the privacy of those in attendance. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event your image is broadcast. This includes any filming by television cameras if attendance is approved by the General Manager. Or acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge that we are here today on the land of the Wamba Parapa people. I would also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to past Aboriginal elders, the present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who reside within this area and their future generations. Statement of purpose. I have come here as a councillor freely and without bias to represent the views of the community in considering the matters before us today, to vote in a manner I consider to be in the best interest of the community, and to observe the code of conduct and respect the rule of the chair and views of my fellow councillors. Okay, apologies and applications for leave of absence. I do have one from Councillor Newell. She has asked. Any others? Well, Paul's not streaming. Do we have a, would you like to move Carrie's absence? Councillor Fawn, thank you. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, we'd like to move Councillor Clapham.
Move a notice of motion for a change of agenda. I'd like to move report 11.1 and make it the first item of business of today's council meeting.
Wonderful. We have a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, all those in favour? Carried. Okay. 11.1 DA, over to you, Mrs.
The DA 122 application has been received for demolition of the tennis courts and construction of car park and solar shade structures at 290 to 308 Duncan Street. The recommendation is that council approve the development application 122 for car park with solar shade structures and as described in the plans and the accompanying details for the application, and in accordance with section 4.16 of the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. The development application was lodged with council on the 13th of January 2022. The proposed development is to demolish 6 existing tennis courts and to construct a new 134 space car park with solar shade structures. The development site is zoned RE2, private recreation, under the Development LEP 2013. The proposed development for a car park is ancillary to the existing use and the recreational facility, being a bowling club, on the site and is permissible with development consent in the zone. The DA was exhibited for a period of 14 days as required for local development under the Edward River Community Participation Plan, and 5 submissions were received objecting to the development. The objections received were generally from adjacent residents of Antonia Street, with the following issues raised: traffic, noise, visual appearance, lighting, future development of the site, size of the car park, impact on flora and source fauna, replacing community tennis courts with a car park, and antisocial behaviour associated with car park users, and decrease in property values. In considering the relevant planning issues raised in the objections, the applicant has made the following amendments to the application. The original DA in relation to traffic showed vehicular access from the car park from both Duncan Street and Pornier Street. Both council and the objectors to the application identified concerns with the increased volume of traffic from Pornier Street. In response, the developer amended the plans, removing all access to the car park from Pornier Street, with access to the car park now being via Duncan Street only. In relation to noise, several key issues were identified, being vehicles accessing the site, vehicles within the car park, and noise associated with the proposed equipment, enclosure, primarily the diesel generator. In response to that, given the revised access, the car park is now from Duncan Street only, noise from the vehicles accessing the car park will be a lesser impact on Pornier Street residents. The equipment enclosure, including the diesel generator, was originally located on the western side of the existing building, adjacent to Pornier Street. The revised plans received from the applicant show the equipment enclosure has been relocated to the eastern side of the building, providing a buffer between the generator and the residents on Pornier Street. In addition to that, given that the generator is a backup generator only and will only operate on rare occasions where there is a power outage to the venue, it is considered as satisfactory to mitigate noise impact associated with the diesel generator. The visual appearance was a concern raised. In response to the issues raised, the applicant has now proposed a 1,500 centimetre high colorbond fence along the Pornier Street boundary. Fencing is considered to be in with the residential character of the area, and a 1,200 millimetre high aluminium full fence is proposed on the northern boundary of the car park, abutting the parking playground. Landscaping and tree planting to the nature strip of Pornier Street will be conditioned, and climbing vines are proposed to the upright poles of the solar structures. Lighting provided in the car park will be associated only in conjunction with when the building is open and the developer, and presumably if overflow parking associated with the RSL car park is required. The lights are not evident on the boundaries of the site, and this is a condition of the consent. The solar panels will face north and therefore are not directly visible from Pornier Street residents, so glare is not expected. In closing, the site is considered suitable for the proposed development. The proposed development is permitted within the RE2 zone, and the development is considered to be suitably located, subject to the appropriate conditions being imposed on any consent granted to protect and enhance the character and amenity of the area. Public interest has been taken into consideration in the assessment of this DA, and council has received objections to the proposal regarding the impact of amenity to the adjacent areas. However, the application has been assessed on its merits against the requirements of section 4.15 of the DNA Act, and it is considered subject to appropriate conditions that the DA could be included.
Thank you, Mrs. Sutton. Do anybody have any questions? Councillors have any questions?
Listed in here, we've got under figure 1, that talks about we've got 6 unused tennis courts and we're going to demolish 4 existing tennis courts. We're removing all the tennis courts, or just we're keeping 2?
Most all of them. Yeah, I think it's a typo.
And then we talk about under 6.1, source of any fill material and likelihood of disturbing relics. That whole area used to be one of the lagoons in town. We're all set for drainage. Will we start to excavate there?
Sorry, you mean during construction?
Yeah, well, in general, it's all set up.
Yeah, it's done. It's when the civil engineer has decided.
It's being built. So we're going to remove that fill to redo the area, or
Well, I'm not sure what's underneath it, so I have geotechnical engineer assessed it. So if there's filling required or removal of spoil, we'll do that.
And then in regards to the disabled parking, we've got one space per 33 and then one space per 100. So there's only two listed on the diagram. Are we having one disabled park per 33 car parks that go in, or one per 100, so only two?
Oh, that's whatever's shown on the drawings. I'll just check. We'd rather have parks on the other side on stage one. I think that exceeds the standard.
And then back to the Star Jasmine. If the Star Jasmine is going to be used, can we replace that instead of perhaps like the cuttings from Wisteria and Merrion Gardens?
We can use some alternative. Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely, we could change the plans on that.
That's all.
Any other questions, councillors? No, the recommendation is there. Would somebody like to move the recommendation?
Madam Mayor, I will not move the recommendation, but propose an alternative recommendation. And I would like to move, if I have a seconder, that this development application be deferred until further communication can be had with the local residents. It's obvious from what we heard this morning that the local residents are not against the DA per se, but there is a serious question around the screening of the area. What's up at the moment certainly does look like an industrial site, and it looks like an industrial site is going into a residential area. I think it's incumbent upon us to protect the environment of our residents and to protect the environment to the extent of what they would see as normal for a residential area. So I would like to see that this DA is deferred until further communication can be had with all parties to come up with a satisfactory alternative.
We have a second by Councillor Peterson. All those, any other discussions, questions, councillor?
I'd like to reassure the committee, the RSL Club and its members that I will support Councillor Fogarty's motion, but my commitment is for the project to go ahead. The case presented by the residents is compelling, and I think I will take on board very much that it is an opportunity for the council to work with the development to create a standard that we should all be very proud of, and that we have listened to all the parties in order to get an outcome that satisfies the RSL and its members and the community needs. So on the basis that an adequate alternative position comes back with landscaping, protecting the visual aspect of it for the residents and the community, I would support Councillor Fogarty's motion.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak?
Was there a read? So within the DA here, there was an option 1 and an option 2 that we had from you, Mrs. Rose. Was there a reason we're not using the dirt car park that's temporary parking at the moment instead of the actual courts that are there at the moment?
Well, that is an area that is zoned differently, and it is an area that was purchased by the RSL with a long-term view of development along there, which is not consistent with the car park. And it's a minor thing, but we believe that Duncan Street is a quiet street. In Street, whilst it's still a quiet street, is a through road, and we believe that walking, having a pedestrian access from a car park in Main Street to the club is much more dangerous than pedestrian access from the proposal to the main RSL club.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. So did you, councillor Byrne?
Madam Mayor, I would like to just comment that I feel it needs further discussion in that this is the first time or Wednesday night that the councillors saw this. I've done due diligence and I still don't feel comfortable, and I feel that there's some other options that maybe the club could take back, as in the roof of the club, as in if there is a further development on the street, the roof there, maybe just a basic car park in front of those houses, whatever. I'd just like to see more information, please.
So the motion is up to defer it to have these conversations. We have a seconder, so all those in favour of deferring this? Aye. Yes. Great.
And that is recorded as a provision that any planning matter has to have all our names. So you also-
Thank you. Everybody.
I'm more used to
You're still live streaming, guys? All right, moving back to where we were, item 7.17, item 7 is the confirmation of minutes. So 7.1 is the draft minutes of an extraordinary meeting held on the 7th of June. Do we have someone to move that? So Anderson, a second round for that.
Do we have to move it first then?
So the minutes of the 7th of June are not correct.
Just that, Madam Mayor, just with who was present, Councillor Fellows and myself were actually on Zoom. We didn't attend the meeting, but we were-
Oh, just to acknowledge that you were Zoom. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, councillor Fawns.
All right, so we had a council moved it. Were you
I'm happy to second that with that amendment.
with that amendment? Thank you. All those in favour? Carried. 7.2 is the draft minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 17th of May 2022. That's Councillor Kingston. That's for that. Thank you, Councillor Platten. All those in favour? Disclose, item 8 is disclosures of interest. Do you have any disclosures of interest for any items today?
Madam Mayor, I clicked on the news to item 7.1, the RSM data. Sorry, 11.1.
Yes. I would just like to note for, which one is it? 11.9. Hector McLean, just for the record, was my great uncle, just so that it's noted. And there are minutes reports of okay. Item 10.1 minutes of committees. Oh, sorry, did I not move the disclosure of interest? Sorry, do I have a mover for the disclosure of interest? Thank you, Councillor Fawns. I have a seconder. Thanks, Councillor Platten. All those in favour? Apologies. Right. Item 10.1 minutes of committees. All right. Recommendations now that they be moved as true and correct records. Questions?
Madam Mayor, through you, may I speak about the Aboriginal Liaison Committee on page 35 in other business? There is reports of inappropriate language being used when referring by a councillor when referring to First Nations people.
I would like it recorded that that councillor referred to was myself,
and that I absolutely deny
that there was any inappropriate language used in reference
to Indigenous, local, Aboriginal,
Land Council people.
whatever, and I believe it was an unnecessary
Comment in council minutes. I would just like to make a stand about that I don't think it was appropriate at all, considering I was not contacted by yourself or the GM regarding this issue and have been not named. I think I should have been named if you're going to put that in a council minute, in council papers, and there should have been room for a response. Thank you.
Yes. So do we have a mover for those minutes, for those meetings? Happy to move it, Councillor Cotton. Thank you. Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to second a couple of adjustments. With the meeting for the Salio, maybe you're down there as attending just 2 people. Neither one. Lovely.
Probably doing 2 and 3 jobs.
I know. And the reference for the vision of tents in the garden of the Aboriginal Liaison Committee, are we able to change the wording for that so it's less?
Sorry, where are you?
Over in the Aboriginal Lands, page 35, vision of tents in the garden for the local community events. Are we able to change the wording for that? It sounds a bit off.
I didn't quite catch that, no.
So under the page 35, under local community events, the 3rd dot point, we've got its references a vision of tents in the garden. Do we have to change the wording to whether it's pavilions or stalls or?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just want to reflect that the minutes of the committee meeting are actually the minutes of the committee meeting, so I'll be guided by governance experts in the room, but I think they are listed as correctly as they were, and I wouldn't see an amendment.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, so we have a mover, we have a seconder. In favour? Aye. Carried. 7.2 development.
the report is provided for illustration.
Page 99. We have it. Sorry. Do we have any questions for Mrs. Sutton?
This is something under public health activities, the water is monitored for, sorry.
It's microbial and that's weekly monitoring and chemical is monthly. And there is, I think, contained pesticide.
Any other questions, councillors? No?
You're happy with the level of development that's happening?
Yeah, obviously, we have no control, but yeah, no, there's been quite a good level of development here. Yes, many inquiries.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any more questions? Do we have a mover for the development services report? Thank you, councillor Peterson. Do we have a seconder? Thank you. All those in favour? 11.3, Mayor, Councillor, General Meeting, General Manager, meeting attendances. Thank you very much. 11.3, meetings and things. Do we have any questions? Sorry, Councillor.
Madam Mayor, on the 3rd of May, I did attend the RDA Visa Skilled Migrants Forum at the RSL Club, and if that could be corrected, and on the 31st of May, I did not attend the NAIDOC breakfast at the Deniliquin High School. You could amend that, please.
Thank you.
Can I add to 25th of May, I attended the Showgrounds Committee meeting.
Yes. Just one sec. Add her in on the 3rd and take her out on the 31st.
Peterson's be added to the 25th. They wrote it up in
No, Showgrounds Committee.
I'm sorry. Oh, so there's another, we've missed a meeting altogether.
The minutes are in, just not the actual.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Councillor Thorns.
Madam Mayor, just an adjustment on the 13th of May, I didn't actually make it to the forum.
Thank you. Anybody else got any others?
Through you, Madam Mayor. On the 26th of May, I attended the Sorry Day morning tea with Councillor Thorns. If that could be amended, please. Thank you.
All right. Have you got all them? We've got them all sorted. Thank you, Councillor Thorns. Do we have a second for those meetings? Councillor Peterson, all those in favour? Carried. For resolutions of council. For you, Mr. Chair.
This is a standard monthly report to note the progress on resolutions of council as at the 10th of June 2022. Total resolutions outstanding for the 2021 financial year is 4, and the remainder is about in the current financial year.
Questions, Councillor Hurd?
Yes, I just have a query on page 110, resolution 2022 0517 11.4. In item 2, notes it will receive an additional 140,000 in general income if the ASV application is approved. Isn't that 40,000? Isn't that supposed to be 40,000?
No, that was in the additional from 0.7% to 2.5%. The $40,000 was a reduction from the 2.5%.
Right, okay, thank you for that clarification. That's good, thank you.
Housekeeping, Councillor. sorry, councillor Payne, just one sec. Did you have another question, councillor Birch?
No, that's okay. One other question, yes, I'm sorry. Page 117, 2021/192, River Street drainage. I know that goes back quite a while. Are we allowed to ask what's going on there? Yes, could you inform us, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yeah, that was in response to a request for the drainage. So it's an open drain in an R5 zone at the moment. Council staff did investigate and provided a report into a briefing, highlighted it in terms of what the project would cost, and for consideration in the initial draft capital works. Council staff weren't supportive of it because ultimately it is urban drainage works within an R5 zone. So council staff don't see this in keeping with the with the servicing for that zoning. No one of those resolutions was just information or report on servicing of R1 and R5 zones in general. At the last briefing, we provided some discussion around road matters, sealing unsealed roads, and staff are just preparing an overall servicing report to come back to council. So with the adoption of the capital works, we'll be in contact with those.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Councillor Cox.
On page 115, number 12.6, the 3 + committees for the halls. Can I just have an update on who's working with which hall committee? I know I'm working with Langmore. Councillor Clapham, are you still working with Canago? Yeah. Just, I don't have it written down anywhere, that's all. So, just if any committee.
And it's certainly a conversation we need to have as well with councillor Mason.
I know Ruben couldn't be formed.
Discussion around yes, she is. Any other questions, councillor?
Through Madam Mayor, 2021/169, the Bold White meeting. We obviously have met with the Canago Hall Committee, and that has been referred back to the government. Now we're seeking the audience with the state government to further resolve the matter. I think that's correct, Mr. Bell.
This through Madam Mayor. Those notes will be updated next time around.
Any other questions? Resolutions? Councillor Platten, was that your hand? Seconder, thanks, councillor Vaughan. All those in favour? Carried. Business and reserves report.
Total investments for at the end of May were 49.1 million, which is an increase, slight increase of 0.4 million from April. We received a FAG grant, fourth instalment, that was offset by operational expenditure. 66% were investments over with NAB, and 37% with NAB and two banks, and 29% with others. 91% of council's portfolio was term deposits and 9% of cash, representing what the current situation is and has been for the last few days. And all investments were invested in A2 or above institution, i.e. low credit risk. Interest earned per month was just under 25,000, and today it's 205,000. Returns of 0.7 basis points, which is 0.65 points above the Bloomberg Bank Index on that slide. So our investments are performing better than the market. That's what that says. Our investments have remained in the 44 million to 49 million range for the past 12 months, with seasonal fluctuations depending on council's operations. For example, June will be a drawdown because it's the end of the financial year. That's when we spend a bit more. Council engaged in period markets for forest services, and the report is tabled, they're attached to read at your leisure. And of course, we make all our investments in accordance with council policy. I would like to comment that with the market being what it is, as we all know, with interest rates going up, the expectation is rates of about 3% can be earned for over 2 years investments. And we're taking the advice of our advisors and using what's available when our investments mature. So what I'm saying is outlook is pretty good, and we should earn more next year. Too early to say how much, but the converse is with inflation, our costs of running the place are going up as well. So it's a double-edged sword, so to speak. But from this aspect, it's looking pretty healthy.
So good news for the budget.
Do you have any questions for?
Yes. Questions. We at the very beginning, where we've got item number 3, it talks about not yet received interest of $205,296.
Yeah, that's basically interest. We haven't physically received it, but we've earned it.
Okay.
So it's not in a bank account.
And then we're just below that list of investment surplus funds. Deficit.
Don't confuse operating result with cash. Cash is what's in our reserves. So if you look at over the page, there's 49 million in our reserves. So that's basically what our funds are. So it's not part of the operating result.
Okay. And then on page 131, we've got several term deposits that are due, I think this month.
Yeah.
Are they being reinvested or are we?
Yeah, we'll reinvest at high rates.
Interest will carry forward.
Questions? Who has a mover? Thank you, Councillor Button. Thanks, Councillor Fogarty. All those in favour? Next 6, integrated planning and reporting.
Madam Mayor, it's with pleasure that the documents that we've been working on and council have been heavily involved in and used in the last 3 months are now tabled for adoption by council. And this is a key process of council each year. Pursuant to the relevant sections of the Local Government Act and Local Government General Regulation 2021, council is required to have in place by the 1st of July each year, which is Friday this week, an adopted operational plan and budget, including a statement of revenue policy and fees and charges. The approval of both funds as detailed in the operational plan and budget is marked or amended by council, and the making and levying of rates and annual charges for the following financial year. This year, because it's a new council, you're also required to have adopted the Community Service CSP, which is strategic plan, and the 4-year delivery program. They're all attached. The suite of documents went on exhibition for 28 days, concluding on the 17th of June. Council staff and councillors attended locally based consultation forums, and a summary of the topics raised from each forum is attached to the council report. Also, since then, IPARTS issued its determination regarding additional special rate variation on the 20th of June, as I notified the councillors. approving a rate increase of 2% as opposed to 2.5%, resulting in a reduction in income, basically about $40,000, which will probably be picked up as supplementaries through the year. And the suite of documents has been reflected, changed to reflect that. So the recommendation is for council for considering and adopting as appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions, councillors? Councillor Birch.
Page 191, paragraph 2, the rate variation 2% for the current year. Then it goes to 2.5. Thereafter, the plan assumes an index increase of 2.5 applicable year on year. Is that a wise thing to do if we are faced with the same scenario as this year?
I think with the cost of living increasing, it's a reasonable assumption. The general manager and myself talked about possibly, in order to get things through IPART, why shouldn't we increase it by 6%? And then say we're below 6%, but then it makes a nonsense of it. The best indicator is at 2.5%. At this particular stage, knowing what we do know, but when this plan is a living document, and when it's next updated next year, will be revised to take on board what the latest recommendations are for market.
Thank you. I just have a few others, if that's okay. Page 196, 4.2.3, the waste. In the it's down as 2.25% increase, 22 to 23, and then 2% from 2023 annually for the long term. Given that we've got future waste management upgrades with the photo and all that type of stuff, is that a reasonable assessment? I'm just questioning.
I think all the assumptions, councillor, in this at the time are reasonable assumptions.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think to answer your question is that they'll get reviewed the next time we update the plan.
Yes. Yes. That's okay. Just one more. 198. 5.3, the borrowings for the seniors living project and aerodrome, 3 million seniors living, 3.1 current financial year is referred to. And then later it says it's not part of the capital works. What does that mean? Is it already in from last year at a figure, or is it not in for
No, it's not in. Because of the changes, we'll be updating the plan specifically for these items when more information is known.
So is that not a difficult thing for us to get our heads around? I mean, I totally understand the position we're in at this late, at the final hour, we're at the 11th hour. However, I have to make some kind of adverse comment here that I feel it should have been, given that they're projects that there's funding for, we're looking at it. I just feel a little bit, look, I'm sure you know what you're doing, but I just feel a little bit concerned that I'm going to sign off on something that I know hasn't got what could be in it, and in reference to seniors living, that could be 40% more than what we thought about last time.
My view is until the certainty around the projects, and indeed until council agrees to do them, then we don't include them in the long-term plans, because we don't know what the consequences are, and they're just guesswork. To be honest, I think the best thing is to leave it out and have discussions.
And then put it in when we get a chance at the next. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. I just was concerned about that. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Now for page 157, where we've got growth strategy process, especially quarterly and annual operational plans. Are we able to have a quarterly operational plan to mark the quarterly reporting?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the reporting mechanism for council is each quarter we do a quarterly QBRS, quarterly budget review statement. I'm used to the acronyms, not saying it out loud. Yes, so basically that was council a chance to amend the budgets. So the point I'm making about, while today is a finalising for setting things in place, things can change the sweep opportunities to change things through the next financial year.
But are we able to have, so we've got these annual operational plans, are we able to make them quarterly, just so we can buddy them up with the?
Well, that's what the QBRS, it's a report that gets it.
There is quarterly reports on progress on the operational plan that come to council every quarter, and they line up with the quarterly budget. So the two are very linked, operational plan and budget. So if there's changes made to the operational plan, that will be reflected in the QBRS.
And I heard someone mention to me that the code of conduct, the related party transmissions, the council for these expenses policy, they would be able to listen to public viewing. But that part of the budget.
They were put out an exhibition for.
Yeah, I had someone say they didn't know where to view them, and I thought they were on display in the library, and they were space. But
Library.
yeah. So I'm happy with that. No, I don't know if it's with you, so it's again.
Okay, that's okay.
Anyway, I just thought I'd want to clarify, so we're held at the library. And then we have over the page on 158, which reviews the organisational structure in 12 months. Are we planning on looking at the organisational structure that has to be reviewed?
You know, man, as councillors may know, it's been a part of my KPIs to undertake a staff engagement survey, which has just kicked off this week actually, and that will then allow us to review accountabilities across the organisational structure, and then that will allow us to provide some recommendations on, allow me to provide some recommendations on the organisational structure that should happen before the end of the year.
Questions?
No, we're down because we didn't get the 2.5% rate variation. We're down $40,000.
$40,000.
Are we able to find those savings somewhere within our budget?
Well, look, through you, Madam Mayor, we're having, what's happening is we're looking constantly at budget and the financial sustainability plan continually. And you recall, I just mentioned that each quarter we'll review things there. The answer to your question is we won't be making savings now, come straight onto the bottom line as increase the deficit for the general fund. But council is looking at ways to increase revenue and decrease expenditures to bring the budget. The budget for councils is technically one thing most councils don't balance. In actual fact, there's many councils that run their general fund of about $7 million, which isn't sustainable. The key indicator for our council is our unrestricted cash, which is currently quite healthy. So we can fund these deficits plus with the drills and capital programs and so on. It doesn't mean a drain in our cash. But I think the key thing is you can't slash and burn because it impacts on services and the things to service reviews and things like that.
Questions, councillor?
Just reiterate what Councillor Parsons. I had a little play around with some sensitivity analysis. We will more than compensate that $40,000 loss. 2.5 to 2%. Certainly with the matters that, as previously mentioned, by high return on our investments, and if it goes the way it's going, we would be cash positive, not cash negative.
Any other questions? Deputy Mayor, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask? No? Okay.
Last comment, Madam Mayor. Look, it is in relation to the cash reserves, and I take on board the comments by the interim director. But I still think we are in a grim position, and with the general fund continually in deficit, it doesn't allow us any room for developing a growth strategy, which has been a key indicator for this particular council. If we continue to run in deficit within the general fund, it's the general fund that gives us that opportunity to be able to do those initiatives that we would like to see done. The same as the comments that have come back from the consultations, that the roads are in quite a considerable state of disarray. with those comments, and it's the general fund that funds all of those things. And I think we really need to have a look at how are we going to pull the general fund back into some sort of balance, rather than relying on the water and the sewer fund to pull us out of the red.
Deputy Mayor.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yeah, and I appreciate everybody's concerns regarding our deficit. But, you know, I think there's something there in the background that I know the finance people are working on, and that is the purchasing of equipment by lease or corporate hire purchase. You know, I think there's about $1.6 million worth of capital expenditure that's paying cash for our equipment. And correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Clapham, but, you know, if we went finance this equipment, rule of thumb is about $300,000 a year payments, with, you know, it's going to free up about 1.6 or 1.3, I should say, $1 million. And I know the finance people are working on that, but I just think it's something that we should just keep in the back of our mind, and certainly would have a great effect on our general account. And it's just something that I think we really need to consider, and I know the finance people are. Thank you.
Thank you. If we don't have any other questions.
I'd just like to make a comment to that, please, Madam Mayor, that I did suggest that exact comment that Councillor Fellows said then back in February. So we're now in July. We've been working on that in a timely
Make
manner.
a year go any quicker than it is.
Okay, well, I'm just saying it could have been incorporated and in action, and in this budget making it look a lot better, the plan. So I'm just bringing that to attention, that it was fairly much wafted over back in February. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have the recommendations there? Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Clapham. Do we have someone like to second it? Sorry. Sorry, are you seconding that motion? Deputy Mayor? Yes.
We've been discussing this for a while now. We agree to the budget.
Recommendations that are there, so. Hang on, sorry, we have a mover. Was Councillor Clapham, you were the mover?
Yes.
Is there anything else you wish to add? No. Was there anything else you wish to add, Deputy Mayor? No. Speakers against?
I just have a few more questions. Within the library scope, we're putting the rate, everything up by about the pupils going up by $1 from 40 cents.
Yes.
So we're now pushing all of the people who've been using the library to the news agents, where they have 35 cents per print, mine were 30 cents per print.
I might ask Mr. Cochran to answer that question, because I know we've got some feedback internally.
Yeah, if council wants to change that, they're welcome to do that. As again, it means it reduces our income. So it's a comment that was made, and the increase that we put up apparently is in line with some other councils. But yeah, council decision.
I've heard a lot of feedback items from the community saying that they feel it would undermine the, not the lower socioeconomic, but those that tend to use the library more, they will turn away and they will start using it in the same which means we can lose that. We were those that have come through COVID. I think that based on what was in here, where it said it was about 6,000 we make a year, but it was about 4,000, I think. The difference between 2001 and 2002.
As I said, it's up to council. That was just what we thought we'd bring it in. Well, taking times to bring it in line with other councils.
The current motion stands as is, but there might be a desire by a councillor to move an amendment to the motion that would take into account adjustment to fees and charges for the library. That was
I would like to make that motion to amend that, but otherwise I'd follow them.
So we go back to Harold to agree. So councillor Peterson wants to move an amendment to the current motion, that we have a mover and you're the mover, and
But the library fees are kept as they are at the moment, like if we do go up by 5 cents as opposed to.
Well, you have to, what is it you're going to do, put them up by 5 cents, or what's the choice?
I'd prefer to keep them as they are at the moment, which is in line with a lot of the shires in the area based on what was sent through from the local authority.
So just in terms of the process, councillors, no agreement to the amendment to the motion, but councillor Peterson may want to foreshadow to speak against the motion and sorry, to speak against this motion, and therefore foreshadow a change to the motion, a change motion if the motion is lost. But at the moment, the current recommendation is the motion on the table for the council.
Madam Mayor, excuse me, if I'm allowed, I would like to just express and have it recorded that I don't feel comfortable. I will agree to long-term financial plan that we're looking at. However, I do feel cornered that we've only got a day or two to go. I feel perhaps a bit of earlier planning may have helped. And I did not want to be the person that voted it down, and that would put us in a very precarious position. But I would just like to take note of my disagreement, that I'm not happy with it, but I will vote for it. Thank you.
we have a mover and a seconder for it. So all those in favour?
No.
Against? Carried. We are item 11.7, councillor and mayoral fees for 2020.
Rick, you want to speak to that?
This is just a statutory provision that the independent tribunal makes an assessment for various categories of councils. Council is then entitled to either vote for the maximum rate that's been recommended. If they don't make a vote, then the minimum rate applies. So you need to make a decision today if you don't want to get the minimum. The recommendation has been put that we've budgeted for the allowance, which is similar to the CPI increase that council staff got. And that's the basis of the tribunal's decision on this. So that's what's before council this morning is, do you want to take up the maximum rate that you're allowed to be paid? Or if you don't make a decision today, from 1st of July, the minimum rate will apply.
Thank you. The recommendation is there. I would actually like to, from the chair, move that we not, that the mayor and councillor fees remain unchanged and that they stay at the previous, that we don't accept the increase. I feel that we've had plenty of discussions about budget. Certainly in the last 5-10 minutes, we've talked a lot about how else can we save it. This council chose very early on to go with superannuation, which has added to fees, certainly something the previous council didn't. And I think 5 months, 6 months into council, you know, we have worked very hard to get to where we are, and we should be proud of what we're achieving. But I don't think, in all fairness, with the rate peg and everything else going on, I don't think that we should be rewarding ourselves at this point in time with a 2% increase. Deputy Mayor, you had something you wanted to say.
I'd just like to agree with you, Madam Mayor, particularly in light of the the IPAC decision, where we do have a reduction in income. And as Councillor Burge has often referred to, you know, we are leaders of the community. And I think it is a great opportunity for us to demonstrate to the community that we are willing to contribute to the lesser income that we're going to receive. So I would support you on that motion.
So you're seconding my motion that that the mayor and councillor fees remain unchanged from the previous year.
Yes.
Anybody else wish to speak for that? Councillor Fogarty?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yes, I would like to speak in favour of retaining the fees where they are and support your suggestion in that. I guess the flip side of that is that it's been commented quite a number of times, particularly from our new councillors, around the work that's involved in council and how the remuneration does not fit that work. So I guess that it is a bit of a two-edged sword, that if we are to encourage people to put their hand up to represent the community, then they feel they need to be remunerated accordingly. But I think given our current financial situation, we're not flush with cash, as I said previously, and I think that at this point in time, that's a really good suggestion from yourself.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak for or against the motion that I have proposed? No? All those in favour of aye? Keeping it where it is. Aye, yes. Anyone against? Aye. Carried. Thank you, and thank you, councillors, for your council is 100% correct. We're not remunerated for the work, but I certainly take the opportunity to thank you and acknowledge that you all go above and beyond and you're doing a great job. 11.8, support for Broken Hill submission. Is he kidding me? I mean, it was my date of birth was having something to do with it. That's I'm thinking the time has come. Date of birth is clutching up with me. All right, 11.8.
Taking the time to, as I stand up to speak to this report, I've turned the heaters off. So thank you. I thought I was having my own personal summer. This is a deferred motion, deferred report, remains unchanged from last month, and there has been some discussion in the briefing session just around what this would mean, particularly for the council. Essentially, there was a resolution carried in the last Local Government New South Wales conference on, and it was resolution number 16, and it talked about banning real estate agents and developers from running for council, from being eligible to run as a councillor. Now, this has not turned into legislation. It is simply a motion that has been resolved, a resolution of the Local Government New South Wales Conference, special conference earlier this year, and it has been put to government. I am unclear as to whether there is any progress on any legislation. However, Broken Hill City Council has written to many rural councils particularly, and have requested that council support their position to rescind that motion that was resolved at the Local Government New South Wales Conference, and to put forward a further motion to the 23rd and 25th of October Local Government New South Wales Conference to adopt a policy that seeks to preclude real estate agents only and close contacts from certain councils. There was some discussion, and I presume this might be made through the debate within this council meeting, is that is it just real estate agents, or is it developers and real estate agents that we put forward to conference? So essentially, the recommendation remains unchanged, but councillors may want to discuss about what they would like to put forward to the local New South Wales Conference.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Questions? Councillor Hall.
I'll just have a question around the point 3, the recommendations. I guess part of our issue has been actually clarifying what a developer is, and in the original resolution that went to the LG New South Wales, point 2.2, landowners who contribute property or sites for planning and development applications. Would I be fair in assumption saying that would impact any one of us if we put any DA into council for anything?
To answer the question from the administrator's point of view, I think that is a fair point, and it does remain in my mind, particularly, and I think my executive don't differ too much in that the definition of a developer is quite unclear. And if it does go to the point 2 there, that includes all of those definitions, then it would very much restrict many people from being able to rise to council.
Councillor Bird.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Did we get a definition? We did discuss this in a briefing, and we were to be given further information on the definition of what Office of Local Government assumed the developer was, which would give us more clarification on whether it's mum and dad developing just one rental property or whether it's a great big corporation doing a land division. So did we get some kind of definition, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, this is a piece of string question. And until there's a court decision, no one will know what the word developer means. As I said at the briefing I made, or the last council, I can't remember now, having been involved in this kind of legal proceedings at a tribunal level, the answer we got from the tribunal is one party couldn't prove that the other party was a developer, nor did the other party prove that they weren't. So that's the state of law at the moment on this sort of issue in local government. And as I say, that's until a superior court, like the Supreme Court or something like that, makes a decision on it, we won't know what that word means. No. Well, as I said, it's a lot of this stuff that we have in statutory law is great on the books until a court determines what it is. And it's only then when it's black letter law that everyone has that power to appeals to the High Court and everything else. But you know, this area is one of those areas that does go to the High Court because earlier state legislation, which sought to limit the impact of the unions on participating in the political process, that went to the High Court. So all these things, until it gets to that decision-making forum like that, it's just a law on a book. And that's as I said, currently in local government circles at the NCAP, the tribunal, that's the state of play. Someone can't prove it, nor can the other person disprove it. So it's not a great state of play, but that's where it is at the moment.
Through you, Madam Mayor, there is an incident at the moment, if you read Hansard from last week in New South Wales Parliament, where this exact thing has occurred up in Sydney with people in council, in political parties, joining in with developers, taking kickbacks. And I think that we need to also take into account the fact that that's why it was set up or proposed in the first place. In a small town, granted, we do all know each other, and it's possibly 70% unlikely that it will happen. However, it does happen, and if I won't mention what's going on, you can read Hansard yourselves, and it's through all the papers. But that's exactly why this kind of proposal was put up. So I think that I understand why it was initiated, and we do need to be aware of that. So other than that,
I think 3 days in Canberra last week, listening to mayors from all over the country was yeah, like I said in my email, it was quite overwhelming in one sense, but in the next sense, we're so familiar. It's amazing the conversations that were had around the table. It's amazing that the debates taking place in the business papers I've given Harold to have a read on. And one of the things that stands out the absolute most is the difference between city and country. And some of the biggest debates held were motions put up by city people that we want blah, blah, blah. So what's it doing in our backyard? You know, and I think a lot of the arguing comes from our kind of councils that, you know, we're copying the slack and we're getting left behind and putting behind the 8 ball and all that sort of stuff because of the behaviour going on in the city councils, and it's really, really wrong. Yes. So, yeah, I agree with you, Councillor Burge. It's a really hard thing, and you would hope that it would, but anyway. Councillor Thorns?
I think Councillor Tucker moved before, to be honest. I think Councillor Peterson maybe, so, yeah. I just wanted to, you know, say that we would hope that we've got all the checks and balances in place and the right declarations that need to be made, and then working as a group to you know, accept that we will act honestly and not bring council into district food there. So I just think this is so limiting and very, very dangerous. And I know it's not legislation yet, but I would prefer to support that all our processes are correct to make sure that we are doing our job properly and within council. So it just frightens me that this landowner just won't be able to do anything. And it's hard enough to get people to stand up and represent their community as it is, without saying, you know, if you're going to apply for a DA, you can't be a councillor.
Councillor Thorne, to the grounds, this is absolutely a horrible motion. The statement of purpose that we read at the beginning of the council meetings clearly states what your objective, what your obligations are as a councillor. It doesn't ask you what profession you are. If you're a bad real estate agent, you're a bad real estate. If you're a bad finance broker, it is a susceptible position for everybody. If local government goes down the path of banning people from any profession being a councillor, then you just open the door for state governments to do it, federal governments to do it. All of a sudden you'll have a situation where all sorts of professions and people, maybe ethnic, religious persuasions, are not able to stand for council because they're deemed by a group of people to be inadequate.
Yeah.
This is absolutely horrible.
Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
Follow me down a rabbit hole, if you will. As a council, we can be construed as a company. Yes. Yes. So with the Bob White Trust that we're trying to organise, that would be held with by council. Should we decide through the Free Car Park Committee to do anything in regarding developing out at Canargo, whether it's to do the hall or anything? Beneficiary number 5, beneficiaries of company trusts or similar corporate arrangements, would that not make us developers and therefore our council be defunct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think the point is well made in that because the definition of developers is very unclear. And absolutely, council is often seen as developers. We've applied for at least half a dozen DAs to do some development in this local community. So that's very much Councillor Peterson's point.
So we have the recommendation there. Do we have?
Moving an amendment to that recommendation. So I would like, if I can, through you, Madam Mayor, happy enough to support Broken Hill with members of the banning of real estate agents, or stopping the banning of real estate agents. Happy enough with point 2, the rescinding the motion, leave out point 3. I guess point 4 can stay. Yes, remove point 5. I just think we need to leave it, rescind that previous motion from New South Wales, and that we've got the right things in place to ensure that we all actually integrity.
Okay, so to clarify, we're leaving in 1, 2,
Yep, rescinding the motion.
yeah, taking out 3.
Madam Mayor, before we go further, it'd be my strong recommendation that if council wants to adjust its position with regards to the Broken Hill, it should really reframe a different motion to be put to the Local Government New South Wales Conference. And that may be along the lines of hearing sort of the room like that. As follows, that Local Government New South Wales calls on the Premier of New South Wales and the Minister for Local Government to not ban developers and real estate agents from cities.
Yes.
And then that could be a bit, I think I'm here.
Happy for that to be, if you got that wording.
Right. Has everybody got their head around Linda's change? Okay. So we have a move. Do we have a second to Linda's? Councillor Peterson. Does anyone else wish to speak or against? Are you all happy? You all happy with that? All those in favour? Carried. Right, 11.9, 100 years of learn to swim.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So council has received a request to support signage down at McLean Beach swimming area in relation to the upcoming centenary, 100-year centenary of the Learn to Swim program. A very important program. I mean, it's still continuing now at the swim centre, but prior to the construction of the swim centre, spent many years down at McLean Beach. Major reason why is the area is named after Dr. McLean. As noted in the report, the program was one of the first of its kind in New South Wales and has been very much trailblazing in that way, and also very important for the community. I think most community members can remember times either themselves and or children, relatives and that having gone through the program. Very important for the area. Living on the river and being such a big part of the community. The signage proposed in line with council signage strategy is similar to the interpretive signage that's recently been installed. Good example of that is adjacent to the 3 muses in Warren Gardens. It provides an area for a fairly large area on the sign for words, for pictures and that, and if supported, council staff will work with the swim club to get a layout of what we're going onto the sign. It can be included into the 22-23 open space and recreation program or the capital works program, whereas the council staff will be looking at funding the
Are we just using McLean's Beach as the Learn to Swim? So we're not referencing where originally the pool and the fontaines were down by the Old Water Resources building? Or George and Edmund Street? Or we have bleachers?
Thank you. Excuse me, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Peterson. So this is a bit of an interesting bit of information just around the Learn to Swim program and the amateur swimming and lifesaving club. So the area on the river bend there, my understanding of George Street and West Street is more attached to the swim club itself. This 100 years is for the Learn to Swim. The Learn to Swim very much predated the swim club. So
This is when Mum had to put their potatoes in a jacket and a fire, do the swimming lessons, and then when they finished their lessons, potatoes were ready. So, Councillor Fogarty, did you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move the motion as is and suggest that in item 1111, the major projects report, that in the area of Our Rivers, Our Region grant, which was a grant that we received to enhance the river forefront, that there's $4,785 left in it, and that could easily pay for the signage.
There's a clear adjustment to the recommendation. Essentially, it's not going against the recommendation.
No.
It basically added to the capital works program, and where it's funded from is just more specific from council.
Yeah. Need a seconder? Questions, concerns? Councillor Peterson, sorry, did you have something?
Second, Madam, if you do.
No. Deputy Mayor, did you have something you want to add? No? No? All good. Okay. All those in favour? Aye. Carried.
See down the bottom of the
$11.10, reconstruction DNA covering.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As part of the work that's been undertaken down at Moore Park Reserve, council had allocated out of the showground stimulus towards the refurbishment of the main homes. As noted in the report, the Wellington District Cricket Club and the Netball Association have been successful in obtaining further funding for that project from the Country Communities Fund. And it's been presented to the council previously that the money that was allocated from the showground stimulus be added to the Stronger Country Communities Fund round 4 project that thus providing more funding to complete that work. The report in front of council is just an administrative process in terms of the funding deed that would allow that money be allocated to the District Cricket Club and Netball Association, providing that oversight from council in terms of how they would manage those funds. As council staff, we're very much supportive of groups being resilient and undertaking projects like this themselves with council support. It's a similar one has successfully been completed out of the basketball stadium. They received funding from council under the Stronger Communities Fund as well as funding. Right, council agreed for the group to project manage it with some oversight from council. So the requirements for procurement, so they have to undertake their procurement in line with procurement requirements for local government. Regular project meetings, and council would be receiving regular reports from that project. So really, the groups want to undertake their own project management of the project. Council staff are supportive of that. Provide assistance. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
So at the moment down at Memorial Park, we've got, I don't think there's any toilet block open at all times. So we have supposed to go with this going through until the new toilet block is constructed. The DNA companies happy to put the new toilet block up to everybody, even if they're not in use.
I think, yeah, thank you, Council Peterson. So unfortunately, the aerial, because that's so the aerial we've got there is a bit old there, because we've recently completed the block down there that includes cricket chambers, and that also includes a public toilet. So we've got sort of that area. My understanding with the discussions is, the new building would function very much like a club room for the clubs, but they would have it, well, it's not open every day for the public, but for public events.
Any other questions?
I've got a very question. Why can't we put these people in charge of getting grants for the council? They get more dollars to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take that comment.
Thank you.
Up there with your music, Councillor Burton. We love those questions. Do we have a mover for the recommendation? Thank you. Gleefully move it, and Councillor Payne, I'm very happy to see it. Anyone have any other comments, wish to speak against it? All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Right. Projects.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the monthly report regarding council's major projects. Several of the projects are coming to an end, which is great to see. It's noted in the report, Moore Road ceiling is expected to be completed in July. Work on Warren Gardens on the amenities and Rotunda are continuing. They finished the Harrison Street amenities block and moving on to the Chrissy Street block. The North Melbourne area, so that's all but done. We're just doing the final, have done the final sealing on them. Got through the Melbourne rest stop, sort of with the lighting, so that's very close to opening up. We're definitely mindful of comments council have made previously about that with screening of the front area, so that is still on things. So in that area, we definitely take on board those comments. What we're trying to do is reach a position where absolutely screening it for privacy reasons, but not screening it so much that it may be a safety reason. So, there is a bit of a point to reach in the end, but definitely still part of the in terms of the civic precinct area, staff have moved into the estates building, and that's going well. In terms of the town hall and civic place, that's still on track to be completed by the end of September. And in terms of the Everett Village, there's two parts of that. The building, the tender's out for that at the moment, closing at the end of this week. And council's staff are in discussion with the contractor for the infrastructure works. And we're organising that.
Thank you. Lots going on. Questions, councillors? Councillor Birch.
It just regards the, through you, Madam Mayor, sorry, the civic precinct, the counter in the main reception area of the estates building. Was that to be replaced, or did we come to some agreement on that? That we felt perhaps it was a bit inferior, there was some broken laminate. Has there been some decision there?
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Yeah, in terms of that, not as a full replacement, but in terms of work, especially on those on the joints between the laminate and that. So the contractor has undertaken that work, and we've had a look at it. We're not particularly impressed with the work that the contractors done. We, as sort of staff and on the client side of the project, felt we gave pretty good direction to the project team and to the contractor, but having it installed and then going to have a look at it, we're not happy with the result. So we're continuing to talk with the contractor about getting a finish onto that that is acceptable.
May I, through you, Madam Mayor, respond to that? working in that industry, it's not acceptable. It should be removed and replaced. And I would like to see that line pursued. It's not something, it is inferior, and with time it will become more inferior. The crack will open up. I did have a look the other day and I was quite unhappy with it. It's just poor workmanship on the job. So, yeah.
We do have, as with every contract, we do have that defects liability period. So it's not the absolute end of the matter. When there are major issues, there are discussions with the contractor, but it's definitely the whole issue of counter is still definitely sort of on notice with the contractor.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor President?
What's happening with the rotunda in the Waring Gardens? So we're replacing the wood panels there. Within the heritage, it's heritage listed building, so with the wood, does that have to replace like for like, or we've adjusted that? I know you did send out an email regarding the change.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pearson, for that. So the choice of the wood now we worked through with our heritage advisor, and that's in terms of heritage issues. Sort of the main place of information for us. I had provided council with information previously because it was my understanding at the time that it was like for like on further investigation that not like for like, but suitable within the area. So we've had some of that updated. Still the outstanding question with that is with the colours, and as reported previously to council regarding the colours and keeping them the same with where the project's up to, and then the extra work required for the roof structure and that we probably have time to revisit that question. So we've had internal discussions just generally around finishes and that, because it just seems to be an issue. There's not a lot of comfort around that, so we're definitely taking that on board, and with that one, just talking with the heritage advisors, so I think it's more information.
Part of it, so I just wonder what the lifespan is with the wood replacement. If we're going to be looking at, instead of, I think, I can't remember how old the rotunda is, whether we're going to be looking at a more frequent replacement and redo of this, and that's going to cost us more in the long run, or if we're going to have the same lifespan of the durability.
Yeah, my understanding we'll get a decent lifespan and durability.
Any other questions? Recommendation is, would somebody like to move the recommendation?
It's out of order, so I apologise. Just with the counter precinct, there was some comments in the paper, and I did write to councillors reading through the colours, which has come up before. I mean, I think it is, in lieu of what's happening, and I said this in my email, it is incumbent on us to, listen to the wishes of our constituents with regards to these matters. If we're able to influence the heritage architects and the heritage designers to listen to our people with regards to colours and so forth, I think we should as council push hard to support our local community. When you've got talented people like Jennifer and others within the community that can add to these projects, it would be sensible to utilise them. That's our proposal.
May I comment on that as well, because we had brought it up before. I think originally, General Manager, you said that the paint had probably already been purchased. I wondered if that was the case.
Given that that was a couple of months ago, perhaps that could have been resold at a greater price these days. Is it worthwhile pursuing that? I mean, when one looks at the courthouse today compared to what it was in its
other colours. It is a very grand, imposing building, and it would be nice to see that followed through. I totally agree with Harold that we have these amazing people who are qualified, they're experts, and I think eventually I'd love to see the creation of a 355 heritage type committee that looked after that aspect and that could advise on any future projects like this. So I'd actually like to see us do something about that colour scheme for the town hall, if that's at all possible at this late stage. But given prices have gone up so much, if they did have the paint, it could possibly be resold on and a different set purchase. So I don't know how we would go with the time factor, General Manager, on sorting that.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Look, and the point I made, and Councillor Burgess is correct. The scope of the project in which the colours and those sorts of things have already been determined. You know, way back when the previous council determined, you know, what we were doing. Arguably, there has been things added on over time, but they've all been subject to a resolution of council. For example, stage 4. Look, councillors could. It's very much within your, you know, the process of governance to say, could we undertake a review of the colour scheme for the town hall particularly? And there might be a desire by a councillor to move it in addition to the recommendation that's there that says seek a report on reviewing the colour scheme of the town hall building. Just to bear in mind though, we've already had significant delays to the project, and this may the prices of paint have gone up as well as all construction materials, and that's because they're quite difficult to source, and this could have an impact on our timelines. But yeah, it's quite within in the, you know, it would be my suggestion if the council is really interested in this that you move an addition to the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, so are you happy to?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Well, I am very happy to move the motion, you know, that we review the colour schemes for the town hall with the information that we've been provided with.
I think it's safe to say that.
And I'd be happy to
second your suggestion of the, so we got that.
So it'll be one that council will receive a note on the major project program progress report for May 2022, and 2, seek a report on reviewing seek a report to review the colour scheme of the town hall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Okay. Anyone else? All those in favour?
No.
Carried. Excellent. This is a motion. We do have
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This report is in response to a question with notice from the councillors regarding the trees on Med Street. For the essence of the question there correctly in the background, how was the permission given? Yes, from the relevant documentation and how we going to offer some remediation and prevent this from occurring again. In addressing those parts of the question and included in the report, I noted in the report there regarding essential energy and their vegetation management. So it is an issue for council and the community regarding trees and power lines. Essential Energy have quite sort of strong regulations regarding how close vegetation can come to trees. And you'll go through town and you'll see pretty well all the trees under the power lines at Park or the centre's K over them, they've been topped. We have noted over time that those requirements from Essential seem to be growing, and very much with this sort of new project starting. Sort of width here is around the trees, and as opposed to just doing a minimum amount of trimming, doing more trimming. So between times the grade that would happen between times would then get close to the power lines. So investigations regarding the matter was those in the report as meeting between council staff and Central Energy on Thursday, the 16th of June, to discuss the requirements with Central Energy, noting that for the management of those trees need to be removed. Staff did note and agree with Central Energy with that, especially with works occurring as part of the Ann Street energising Ann Street project. The contractor then acting for Essential Energy decided to do that work on that weekend with less traffic in that area and less impact on the community to do it on that week. So apart from the deal and the investigation done into it, just that the sheer shortness in time between sort of when that was discussed and the works being undertaken. In terms of remediation, there is quite a substantial budget within the Ann Street project for vegetation, for landscaping, and council staff are including in that two options: either the replacement of the trees along that same line under the power lines that would be much more compatible. We tend to do trees under power lines going up to about that 5 or 6 metres maximum height, so they'll be under that. A second option there is to undertake similar works as what council has done along Cressy and Napier Streets, where those streets are pumped out sort of into with outstand curb blisters being brought out away from underneath the power lines. So there'll be 4 outstands that would line up with the existing parking, and then provide for new trees to be placed there. And because those trees are away, there's much more scope for larger trees. In terms of preventing this from happening again, and this is sort of where the discussion internally has been around, that it was ultimately from staff a quick decision without that full engagement of it, given that it was midweek and then onto the weekend, that the work was undertaken in the past around trees. There has been different procedures in that in terms of when trees are removed, from regional level, and start for that. So in looking at it, and especially in high value areas, definitely a senior management sign off, so that then wider concerns than just the immediate technical concerns can be addressed. Because in my review of this, I can very much see from that technical side of it, having trees, and the council has this ongoing problem with trees under power lines, being able to replace those trees, bringing new trees, getting that funded through external funding, and continuing with street tree renewal. They are good things to do, but the wider that wider engagement, that wider information, so that when works like this are undertaken, are fully known and appreciated what the outcomes can be. So that's just some work we'll do there in terms of preventing this from ever occurring again. That's what we'll be looking at doing, is strengthening the processes where that approval for tree removal comes in at a senior level. So summing up with the investigations and that, as staff, we do apologise that information wasn't provided, and that as a group, the councillors and the general manager were blindsided. Like this action. It's not something that we tend to happen. With any project, any project, we've got the reports, the regular monthly reports around capital works and that. So that outcome, that side of the incident is, for our staff, definitely regrettable, and the further discussions around reviews and especially around these incidents will be undertaken, as well as sort of turning out the approval side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your apology noted, and I'm sure you're all over the process moving forward. Councillor Birch.
Thank you, Mark. Could I just make 3 comments about this? It was a bit of a travesty all the way through. What I would like to ask is, and that council consider in the future, 3 different things. The first thing is the actual men with the chainsaws were an out-of-town crew, and at the point of incident, I did quickly ring the local crew who used to do that kind of work, and as 2 separate men in that crew, it was awarded by Central Energy to a group from Wagga who were the ones coming down that trace. If it had been a local group, they would have sought the correct permission. That's what they assured me. They knew the terrain, they wouldn't touch anything without approval. The second thing is in relation to the power companies. How about our council starts to put in motion that, given the extraordinary amount of profit they've made over the years, they start to look at putting power lines in the central business district underground. The other thing I would like to ask is, I know it's been difficult with the amalgamation of Conago and Old Deniliquin. I believe with the Old Deniliquin Council, there was a process in place which stopped that type of thing happening. You had to go through certain loops to cut down any tree anywhere. Do we have that now in the Edward River? And if not, perhaps we should be looking at that type of thing, because so there is a law in place that prevents it happening again. Because the same thing happened to me with a council worker cut down the trees on my nature strip. So I do think that there should be something in place whereby, all right, Essential Energy saying we need to cut that down. It's got white ants. Okay, we want to see the white ant declaration, which I'm not convinced about, because they'd be all through those trees there if they were. That's beside the point. But I just feel that there should be a process, and then that's shown to the people in an immediate vicinity. It's a bit like a DA to cut down a tree these days. On a farm, you cannot cut down a tree, or on a riverbank. And so I think we need to have something in place whereby our council says, oh, no, you don't, just out of the blue do that. I know we agreed to this, but that's not human error. It's an error because maybe there wasn't something further back in place. So could we perhaps look at that in the future?
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Yeah, we can. I'll answer with those. The first part is with the contractors, and they have had that changeover. So they're contractors who are engaged directly by Essential Energy. In terms of the power lines and that, we can write to Essential Energy. My experience and council's experience, because we've actually just recently done this, is that either bundling, because you'll see where there's the 4 lines, which is the low voltage, can be bundled into one, which doesn't negate, it reduces sort of how much trimming needs to do, or the lines can go underground. But that, because we did this in Cressy Street, it was a big part of the Cressy Street project between Napier and Edwards, that came at the cost of council. We can sort of contact them, but that would be a capital cost to council. In terms of the process, and you're right, the former Deniliquin Council did have a process where tree removals did come up and were signed off by the general manager. So they are still somewhat operational in nature, but it did work well in that it just gave away from the technical people, myself included. That's sort of where I get a bit more into the technical area and can see outcomes where doing what was done are advantageous, but having someone like the general manager come in, it's a different thing. So that is one that I believe over the years probably we've moved that down. What this has highlighted that we will review and put that in as a policy procedure, that tree removals need to be approved by the manager, and the general manager will then ask questions around that. It is a question around trees under power lines that if essential energy highlighted and say this needs to be removed, this needs to be trimmed back, and they may get back to a point where it's unviable for the tree to still be there. My understanding is once essential energy make that determination, and council then says no, council is taking on the liability around that decision. So we don't come down every day, and this is part of this in my review of this one is that we did jump a bit on that information from essential, and then we've got here to, as I say, technically we could see it. On review on that, we would, and this indicated, and this time we said to essential, no, we note that, that's fine. We will go and organise another way of doing it. But that is just a part of it with that. But we would be looking at, in terms of tree removal, strengthening procedures around oversight.
Thank you, Mayor. In regards to the recommendation, I thank the director for his honesty in terms of the report. It certainly had to say it's been an unfortunate incident is a total understatement. I would like to see a recommendation and would like to move a motion that we do note the report, but secondly, that we develop a policy across the community of tree removal, and that tree removal come back for further discussion at a workshop so that all councillors can have a position in the development of that. And the director is quite correct in his assumption that the previous Deniliquin Council did have a policy that tree removal had to be okayed by the GM. But taking a step back from that, before that policy, there was a previous policy that no tree could be removed without an arborist report, and that arborist report come to the councillors for decision. So maybe we need to find a medium in between there. The third part of the motion that I would like to see is how are we going to remediate this area? I believe what has happened is an absolute catastrophe. That when we talk about we're enhancing engagement, we've certainly enhanced engagement along End Street, no doubt about that. I think there's been not one person who has a property along End Street hasn't made comment to me to the detriment of what's occurred. And to me, it would seem totally unnecessary of what's occurred. We didn't have an arborist report to say that there was white ant infestation. I've had comments made to me from a well-respected horticulturalist in the community who would oppose that view. And in her view, there is no evidence of white ant activity within the tree, the flame tree that was cut down. There's certainly no evidence of white ant in the jacaranda tree that was taken down to footpath level. And I can only imagine what would happen in a town like Grafton, where they're renowned for their jacaranda trees and have their jacaranda festival. if Essential Energy or whoever is the power company in that area decided to come along and massacre their jacaranda trees. Or if a similar event occurred in Camberwell, where we have beautiful plane trees in Camberwell. Even if, as Councillor Birch has said, these contractors came from Wagga, you only have to walk along some of the streets in Wagga. This street is one street in particular, where the flame trees overarch both sides of the street, and the council has been able to effectively work with those trees, both in their reduction from the power lines and the work that's occurred within the footpaths to keep the footpaths safe, while at the same time preserving the trees. So I think we've got a lot to learn from what's occurred in other places. And I would hope that we never, ever see such an event as what happened last Saturday morning happen in the community again.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'll just clarify the motion that Councillor Fogarty has moved, if I may. The council one notes the report regarding the removal of street trees along the N Street, along N Street.
And I'd also like to include on that, I thank the director for his honesty. We have made a mistake and we've owned up to our mistake.
For his honesty. That conclude that in item one. Now, item two, develop a tree removal policy for consideration by council. Item three, provide a further report on replanting plans for the N Street precinct.
How are we going to remediate the trees that have been removed?
Is it acceptable to have remediation plans for?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, so, Councillor Fogarty's moved that motion. We have a seconder. Councillor Peterson, any other comments, concerns, queries? Councillor Peterson?
On the last page, just before confidential matters, that last paragraph, Essential Energy have given council a list of 45 trees throughout generic limit of falls risk or considered in control of vegetation. When was that list received?
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. That was only received a week ago.
Okay.
That is part of that. So, in line with that, I received from staff some information on remediation of that in the area. So that will be coming up to next week's business paper, plus some more information, and thanks for the reference to that information from the energy, so we'll have that information for councillors as well.
I think at the beginning of June, because the Jubilee has now finished, the trees for the Queen grant that was out from the tree department has expired. Do we know if there are any other grants going regarding vegetation rotation that we could apply for as council to offset the cost of what it's going to cost to fix some of this and to replace some of those 45 trees?
Yeah, so in terms of the N Street project in specific, the project does have funding, so externally funded, so that's funded to undertake the works that we'll be looking at doing. So we'll work out the best way forward, and the project will fund that. In terms of the additional these additional trees, I'll put that in front of council, and it'll just be a discussion around, because some of them are in sort of areas that the removal of them or major trimming won't impact. So I think it'd be a good discussion just to work through, and generally work through electricity lines and street trees in general.
I think Councillor Fogarty's motion, the part will help encapsulate that and find ways to. Any other?
Thank you, Councillor Fogarty. Thank you, Director, for the honest support. Just think there's a matter that needs to be raised here in a public forum. We've only an hour or so ago, deferred a DA on the basis of the inappropriate aesthetics that was created in that particular area. If I was on the board of RSL Club and a member of the RSL Club, I would be smacked a little bit by the hypocrisy of the events of the last week, where we've absolutely destroyed the aesthetics of a street which is only a few hundred yards away from the development that is happening. It is absolutely incumbent on this council to take leadership in this process. Developing their sites, because we don't like what it looks like.
Awesome. Councillor Thorns.
Just want to, I may be supporting councillor Fogarty's and the other comments that have been around the room, but did specifically want to say it's about lessons learned in this scenario. I think Mr. Delfell for his honesty and apologies, and yeah, I just want to reiterate, as long as it's about lessons learned in this. The other thing I'd like to mention around that is communication. When something emotive like this is happening in our community, it would be really great if we could actually have that communication beforehand, so that if the community does come to us, that we know where we are.
All right. Move for the amended. All those, no other discussions? All those in favour? Aye. Carried. Awesome. Great discussion. All right. Item 14, no confidential matters. I will now, there being no other business, I will now declare our meeting closed 11:04 AM, and thank you all for your efforts. Wonderful job.